On the morning of September 8th, 2014, Tong Sha did not return home. For a 19-year-old international student known for her discipline, responsibility, and close connection to her family, this absence was deeply unsettling. She had classes that day. She had plans. She had never disappeared without explanation. At that moment, no one yet knew that Tong Sha was already dead. They only knew that something was terribly wrong. Tong Sha was born in Dalian, a busy coastal city in northeastern China with a population of more than 6 million people. She was the only child of Chongxiang and Yang Shu, and the bond between the three of them was exceptionally close. Tong was the center of her parents' world, their pride and their hope for the future. From a young age, she displayed remarkable promise. She was creative and artistic, yet also analytical and academically gifted. She played the piano, loved to dance, and excelled in school. Friends and family often said there was nothing she could not achieve if she truly set her mind to it. She earned a place at Dalian Yuming Senior High School, one of the most prestigious schools in the city. The school had built a reputation for producing top performers in China's highly competitive college entrance examinations, known as the Gaokao. Students who consistently excelled could sometimes gain direct admission to elite universities. Tong worked tirelessly toward this goal, but despite her efforts, she did not achieve the outcome she had hoped for. Her boyfriend at the time was admitted to a top university. Tong was not. The disappointment was crushing. Years of intense academic pressure suddenly felt meaningless, and her future seemed uncertain. At the same time, her relationship began to unravel. Faced with both personal and academic setbacks, Tong stood at a crossroads. Rather than retreat, she made a bold and life-altering decision. She chose to leave China and start over. Tong decided to move to the United States to attend Iowa State University, where she planned to study chemical engineering. It was an enormous leap for a young woman who had never lived abroad. Her parents supported her without hesitation, contributing their entire life savings, nearly $100,000, to fund her education and new life overseas. Before she could leave, Tong needed to pass an English language proficiency exam in Beijing in July 2011. It was there that she met Xiang Nan Lee. Lee was also studying English and preparing to move to the United States, where he planned to attend the Rochester Institute of Technology in New York. The two connected quickly, bonded by shared uncertainty and the excitement of starting new lives in a foreign country. Tong viewed the relationship as casual. Lee, however, appeared to feel something deeper. When Tong's parents met him, they found him quiet, shy, and polite, yet they sensed the pair were not well suited for each other. Others shared the same concern. Tong reassured everyone that the relationship was not serious and that there was nothing to worry about. In September 2012, Tong arrived in Iowa and quickly flourished. From the beginning, she maintained high academic standards while fully immersing herself in college life. When she was not studying, she danced, socialized at parties, and taught Chinese to fellow students. She made friends easily and grew especially close to her roommates. Although she was the oldest of the group, they affectionately called her "Little Sister" because she was the smallest, standing just over 5 feet tall. Her best friend and roommate, Jean, later described Tong as exceptionally intelligent. She was the type of student who constantly worried she was not studying enough, yet still earned straight A's and ranked at the top of her class. Tong appeared confident, driven, and full of promise. Despite the distance between them, Tong and Lee continued communicating. Then, unexpectedly, Lee decided to transfer to Iowa State University as well. Without housing and before his classes began, he temporarily moved in with Tong and her roommates. What began as a favor soon became deeply uncomfortable. Lee kept to himself, rarely socialized, contributed nothing to household chores, and left messes throughout the apartment. More troubling was his behavior toward Tong. He did not like her spending time away from him. He wanted to know where she was, who she was with, and when she would return. Tong insisted they were not officially a couple, but privately she was growing increasingly uncomfortable. His possessiveness weighed on her. Eventually, Lee moved into his own apartment and officially enrolled in classes, bringing relief to Tong's roommates. But the tension did not end there. Further conflict arose when Lee gave police Tong's address as his own during a traffic stop. This infuriated Tong and her roommates, who no longer wanted any association with him. By this point, even hearing his name caused frustration. Tong confided in friends that she wanted to end the relationship properly and move on. She was emotionally distancing herself and beginning to envision a future without Lee. On September 3, 2014, she spoke to a friend she had recently grown close to. Romantic feelings were beginning to develop between them. Tong admitted that her relationship with Lee had made her unhappy for a long time and that she intended to leave him. However, she and Lee had already planned a weekend trip together to a motel. Tong told her friend she would go, resolve things afterward, and then move on with her life. 4 days later, on the night of September 7th, Tong's father sent her a message asking whether she had replaced a pair of glasses she had recently lost. Her response was brief and unusually cold. She said she had borrowed a pair from a friend. When her father asked to video call, she declined, saying she was too busy. The exchange left him unsettled. That same night, at 1:30 a.m., one of Tong's roommates received a strange text message sent from Lee's phone. The message claimed that Tong was still in Iowa City, that Lee had lost his phone, and that Tong was traveling to Minnesota to visit friends. It added that the phone battery was running out. Nothing about the message felt right. When Monday morning arrived, Tong still had not returned home. Concern quickly turned into fear. Days passed without any contact. Her phone was silent. Her social media accounts were inactive. Friends reached out to contacts in Minnesota, but no one had seen her. On September 18th, with dread settling heavily in their hearts, Tong's roommates reported her missing. Police initially considered the possibility that Tong had returned to China, something not uncommon among international students. But there was no evidence she had left the country and no proof she had traveled to Minnesota. Tong Sha had vanished without a trace, and whatever had happened to her was only just beginning to unfold. As the days passed with no sign of Tong Sha, fear spread rapidly through Iowa State University and the surrounding community. Her disappearance rattled students and faculty alike. Flyers were printed and shared across campus. Social media posts circulated, pleading for information. Everyone who knew Tong struggled to reconcile the image of a bright, disciplined young woman with the idea that she could simply vanish. Police began retracing Tong's last known movements. Credit card transactions and witness statements soon revealed that on September 5, 2014, Tong and Xiang Nan Lee had checked into the Budget Inn and Suites in Iowa City, room 218, just as they had planned. The motel owner, Ken, confirmed the check-in. He recognized the couple, explaining that they had stayed there before and that their visit appeared entirely normal. The following day, Ken recalled seeing Tong walking alone through the motel lobby. CCTV footage later showed Tong and Lee stopping at a nearby gas station to buy bottled water. There were no signs of distress, no indication that anyone had followed them, and nothing to suggest violence. At least not yet. On the morning of September 7th, Ken noticed something unusual. Tong's car was gone, and the room appeared empty. The couple seemed to have left early, yet no one had officially checked out. While early departures were not unheard of, Ken found it strange. In previous visits, Tong and Lee were often late checking out and had to be reminded to leave. Even more frustrating for investigators was a technical glitch in the motel's surveillance system, which meant there was no footage of the couple checking out. Detectives then searched Tong's apartment. Inside, they found a receipt for a car she had recently purchased, which provided them with the vehicle's make, model, and license plate number. That information was sent to law enforcement agencies across the region in hopes of locating the car. Search warrants were also obtained for both Lee's apartment and the motel room. Lee's apartment was in disarray. Belongings were scattered everywhere, and it appeared as though he had packed some items hastily. At the motel, investigators noticed small, dark-colored splatter marks on the headboard and walls. However, without clear evidence of a crime and knowing that other guests had stayed in the room afterward, it took time to obtain authorization to collect forensic samples. Attention then turned to Lee's phone records. If, as claimed in the strange text messages, Tong had his phone, it could provide crucial location data. But the records told a very different story. Between September 5th and September 8th, several calls were made to a man named Paul, mostly from Ames, Iowa, not Minnesota. One call stood out above all others. It had been made from China. The message sent to Tong's friends claiming she was in Iowa City had actually been sent while the phone was in Chicago. Investigators soon confirmed that Lee had traveled to Chicago for a connecting flight, which was delayed. Instead of waiting, he flew to Los Angeles and then boarded a flight to China. He had never lost his phone. Tong never had it. Paul later spoke with police, explaining that Lee had contacted him asking for help purchasing a plane ticket to China. Lee claimed it was an emergency, but offered no details. When Paul asked if he needed a return ticket, Lee said no. By this point, investigators were convinced that Tong had been the victim of a serious crime. Xiang Nan Lee was officially named a person of interest. On September 26, 2014, a breakthrough came. Police received a report that Tong's 1997 Toyota Camry had been located. The car was parked beneath a tree near an apartment complex just outside Iowa City. One of the nearby apartments belonged to Lee. Residents said the car had been sitting there for weeks. They also reported a strong, foul odor coming from it. Officers waited for a warrant to open the vehicle, but the smell told them what they were likely to find. When the trunk was finally opened, the odor intensified. Inside was a suitcase. Within that suitcase lay the badly decomposed body of Tong Sha. A dumbbell was also found inside, along with a blood-stained towel wrapped around her head. Although formal identification required forensic testing, investigators already knew. Tong Sha had been found in the trunk of her own car. An autopsy later confirmed the cause of death as asphyxiation and blunt force trauma. Investigators believed Tong had survived the initial beating, only to suffocate after being forced into the suitcase. Her smashed phone was found on the driver's seat, and travel documents belonging to Lee were discovered in the car. Armed with this evidence, police returned to the motel with a full forensic team. The bloody towel used to wrap Tong's head was traced back to the motel room. Luminol testing revealed traces of blood on furniture and other surfaces. Surveillance footage from nearby stores showed Lee purchasing the suitcase from TJ Maxx, spending time comparing sizes. He was also seen buying 2 dumbbells from Walmart, one of which was later found in the suitcase. These discoveries pointed to chilling premeditation. Further investigation uncovered a critical detail. On September 3rd, Tong had confided in a friend about her intention to leave Lee and move on. Unbeknownst to her, Lee had accidentally overheard the conversation after calling her phone and remaining on the line for nearly 30 minutes. The call lasted over 3 hours. Shortly afterward, Lee posted a cryptic message on social media that read, F*** my life. Detectives now understood the motive. After overhearing Tong's plans to leave him, Lee flew into a rage and began planning her murder. On September 5th, the couple checked into the motel. On September 6th, Lee purchased the suitcase and dumbbells and booked a one-way ticket to China. On September 7th, Tong was killed. Lee then returned to his apartment to gather belongings, debated disposing of the suitcase in the Skunk River, where phone data placed him between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock a.m., and ultimately abandoned the body in the trunk of the car when he realized the river was too shallow. He spent the following hours impersonating Tong through text messages to buy himself time before fleeing the country. In March 2015, an arrest warrant was issued for Lee. But by then, he was already in China, a country with no extradition treaty with the United States. The situation seemed hopeless. In May 2015, Lee surrendered to police in Wenzhou. He was formally charged with intentional homicide and later pleaded guilty. He claimed the killing was impulsive and in self-defense, but the overwhelming evidence told a different story. In June 2016, Lee was sentenced to life in prison. Under Chinese law, the sentence could later be reduced, but for Tong's family, the verdict brought a measure of justice. The loss devastated Tong's parents. Her father's health deteriorated, and he was unable to travel to the United States to bring his daughter's ashes home. Their grief was immeasurable. Tong Sha's case became a landmark example of international cooperation in criminal justice. But beyond legal precedents and diplomatic negotiations, it was the story of a young woman with limitless potential, cut short by jealousy, control, and violence. Tong's friends remember her as warm, intelligent, and full of life. To this day, her roommate Jean carries a prayer book Tong once gave her, a reminder that even in the darkest tragedies, the memory of the victim endures. Tong Sha did not walk alone in life, and she will not be forgotten in death. Public pressure in China grew intense. Tong's case dominated headlines. Social media users shared Lee's photo, and the hashtag #FindLee trended nationwide. Chinese authorities eventually cooperated with U.S. investigators, agreeing to locate and arrest him.